We can get a roll call.
Neil.
Here.
Jared here. Katie?
Here.
Mike.
Here. Okay, moving on to item 2A. We don't need to take any action on that since the president and clerk are here. So we'll move on to item 2B, board to receive bids for the $11,925,000 taxable combined purpose building bonds of the school district and take action to award bonds to the lowest bidder.
All right, I do appreciate everyone's time. Before we get into the bids, a couple of items. Everyone should have a record of bids form if you want to make some notes. Behind that, we've provided a board member motion form. That motion form is not required by any means. Here to assist. The three items, I'll peek at someone's agenda. The two items on that motion form are going to correspond with agenda items B and C, respectively. Apologize, I'm used to items 2 and 3. B and C are the two items that are going to correspond with that motion form. When we set up our bond sale, we were estimating 5% on the interest rate. Now, unfortunately, today we only have one bid, and I'm a little perplexed by that, to be real honest. We had two bidders showing. We only have one bid, so we're going to read through the bid. We'll talk about what your options are. You do have the right to reject bids. The good news, we do have bond sales from all over the state, and so we always go over not only the bids that we've received, but what else is selling across Oklahoma. We were showing right up before the bond sale that there were at least two people interested in potentially bidding. One of them is actually an Oklahoma City outfit, and they ended up not submitting a bid. So I have asked my office to reach out to them to find out, hey, is there a reason you guys didn't bid? Has anything changed? I've had bidders tell me everything from the guy that writes bids is actually turkey hunting. I've had bidders tell me we bought a $100 million deal 10 minutes before yours. We just didn't have the capital. So hopefully we will get some more feedback from them. We'll look at the one bid. Again, I mentioned just a moment ago, our benchmark is 5%. That's what we estimated on the interest rate. I'm going to read through a couple of these. We'll read through the bid, and then we can have another further discussion on that and how it affects and how it impacts us. Bonds that have sold across Oklahoma recently. And again, we are selling taxable. It has to do with when we get our bond proceeds and when the lease payment is actually due. If it's outside of 90 days, we have to do it taxable for IRS compliance. But as a comparison, Clinton Public Schools, they sold a taxable bond. They had a low bid of 4.75, bids ranging all the way up to 5.48. That bond sale was 2 days ago on the 19th. Clinton Luther Public Schools had a taxable bond on the 16th, on May 16th. They had a low bid of 4.61 with bids ranging all the way up to 5.11. Glenpool Public Schools had a taxable bond on May 15th. Their low bid was 4.62 with bids all the way to 4.875. Haskell Public Schools on the 15th, their taxable bond, and these are smaller. These are in the $1 to $2 million range. We're in almost $12 million. But Haskell Public Schools, they were at 4.74 with bids all the way to 4.99. Little Axe Public Schools. Now this was much smaller, but Oklahoma City area-ish. They were at 4.88 with bids up to 5.37. Midwest City, Del City, they had a taxable bond on May 12. They were at 4.59 with bids ranging to 4.99. Mustang Public Schools also had a taxable bond. They were at 4.56 with bids ranging up to 4.89. So that taxable market bids have been coming in the mid fours, upper fours, 4 3/4, well into 5%. I mentioned our benchmark is 5%. So if no other bids were delivered to the school, then I'll read the one bid that we have received. Were any bids delivered?
No.
All right. I always want to double check. The one bid that we received is by R.W. Baird out of Milwaukee. R.W. Baird out of Milwaukee. They have a premium of $715.50. $715.50. They have a net interest cost $1,179,859.50. Again, $1,179,859.50 for an average interest rate 4.947. 4.947. Going back to some of those bids that have been received across the state, again, market does change from day to day. I have not seen anything today that indicates that there's any kind of rapid movement. We haven't been told anything. Like I said, my office is going to continue to look into, hey, normally we would have expected 2 to 3 bids. 3 is kind of our average bid volume. We do have about a dozen bond sales every year where we only get 1. I had one just last week at Millwood Public Schools. It was tax exempt, not the same thing, but it's not just completely unheard of to only have 1 bid is my point. Bids, again, going back over those, we're at 494. Our benchmark is 5%, so we are consistent on our tax rate. Millage rate stays right where it should. We still have that conservative outlook on our valuation. I apologize, I'm either on or off with these. It's 2 feet and in. But some of those bids, again, as a reference, 4.75, 4.61, 4.62. We're off by maybe 0.25% on some of these, not completely out of whack. My philosophy is normally 1 in the field is, 1 in the hand is better than 2 in the field. While it's not maybe exact with some of our comparisons, market may have changed, bidders' appetite may have changed. There's no guarantee if we reject the bids that we would get anything better or that we would have more bidders in the future. I respect your right to reject the bids. It takes about 4 to 5 weeks to get back to this point. I say all of that to say, in my opinion, even though we only have 1, we accept the 1 bid moving forward because, again, it is in line with our tax projections and it is roughly in line with market conditions at this time. Going forward, we have no guarantees into the future, but I respect the difference of opinion on that. There's no minimum requirement that we have more than 1 bid. When we only have 1, the Attorney General does make me provide some extra documentation to prove did we put forth a good faith effort to get as many bids as possible. We used an online bidding platform which actually sends it out. I've been told 7,000. I don't know that that's an accurate number, but it does blast it out to thousands of bond traders, not necessarily thousands of different firms. I would assume the firms is in the hundreds. But it does send it out to a large volume of regular market participants that receive this information. So I think we've put forth a good faith effort to get the best possible rates. For whatever reason, again, was there a $100 million bond that sold 10 minutes earlier? Was it someone was turkey hunting? Is there something else that we need to look into in the future going forward? We haven't been given any indications, but I think we did put forth a good faith effort. We are approximately in line with market conditions. Therefore, I would recommend that we accept the 1 bid that we've received. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any recent bid or sales that were closer to dollar amount to ours, like even if they're...
So the closest in dollar amount, Stillwater, and they were tax exempt. They sold $15.7 million. And that tax exempt equivalent is normally about 65-70% of a taxable. So and Stillwater's low bid was 3.56. Again, we got to convert that. 3.56 divided by 0.7. It puts it at, I didn't do that right, 3.56. It puts Stillwater at a 508 if you're using 0.7 conversion rate. Another way, sometimes they'll use as low as 0.65. I've heard as high as 0.8. So that's why I settled on the 0.7 as an interim. If we did 4.94 times 0.65, that would be a 321 tax exempt rate. Let me do one more at the 0.7 and then I'll read some of these tax exempt sales that have sold for you. 4.94 times 0.7 is 3.45. So if we compare on a taxable equivalent, a tax exempt equivalent, if we convert that, Stillwater was the only one that was above 10 million. Midwest City, Del City, they did have a tax exempt bond. They only had 1 bid, and it was at 366. So Midwest City, Del City, and I'll show you on my note page, they sold a taxable, which I read aloud a minute ago, 4.59, and on the exact same day they sold 17, almost 18 million tax exempt, and they were at 366. I think I was at 345 on that conversion. So 345, 366. We have to scan down to looks like May 6th. Broken Arrow Schools, that was a tax exempt. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mustang, thank you. Mustang on their taxable was at 456, up to 489.
I was 4 million. I was just looking for higher numbers, you know, than the.
Usually the higher volume, the lower rate.
It usually is. It is. It is. The larger the dollar amount, usually you do get a little bit lower rate. There's not a hard line. What we see oftentimes is once you hit about 8 million, you're jumping to a little bit different bidding group, and then once you get closer to that 20 million, you're now entering a different bidding group. So we are a little bit. It sounds weird to say, but $12 million, we're kind of in a little bit of an interim spot. I would have expected 3 bids today, honestly. I really would.
It's the first time ever since I've been on the board, we've not had
More than one.
more than one.
Right, right.
It's the first time I've been here where we didn't have the local partnership thing going on.
That does not surprise me from this perspective. We have entered a different tax category. When you go over 10 million, you enter a different tax category, but 2, we're also taxable. So that does impact their ability to buy. They may not have nearly as much appetite for a taxable product in their portfolio. Banks do run into loan limits as well. No matter how bad the desire, they are restricted by law of buying too much from one particular client. That has come into play, not necessarily here, but in other districts in the past. I've had bankers call me and say, hey, I want to, my hands are literally tied by my federal loan limits. I couldn't, no matter how bad I wanted to. So there are some other factors that do come into play. I imagine specifically just being taxable. And the reason we're selling taxable, we're taking part of this bond money, well, all of it nearly, and we are making payments on construction loans. That's called an advance refunding scenario. That's a refunding. When you go outside of 90 days, it's considered an advance refunding. And when it's advance refunding, that's a taxable event. So we have to sell upfront taxable. And as you can see, there's a number of districts across the state that are taxable because of that exact issue. Did I read? I was looking at one upside down. This $19 million, this was a tax exempt at Mustang. So Mustang they actually had 3 that day, 2 tax exempt and 1 taxable. They were at 338 on the other one on a similar dollar amount. So the comment earlier about block size, when you jump from 4 million to 19 million, they dropped about 7 or 8 basis points. Probably a little bit closer to that 345 that I mentioned earlier on the tax exempt. So again, it's always alarming. I hate it. If I'm being completely honest, it makes me wound up. If you haven't picked up in my voice, it makes me pucker. But it does happen about a dozen times a year. Again, we've put forth all the good faith efforts, all of the mandatory requirements, and the state does require additional documentation from me to validate that. Hey, did we really do it? Bottom line, we're in line with our tax projections to our patrons, and that's the single most important factor. And we're not really far outside of some of those. We can look on paper and say we would have gotten a 474 if we had 3. Maybe, maybe not. There's no guarantee.
So we're in our window.
We're in our window. Number one thing,
Millage isn't
changing. That's
And
the single biggest factor.
If we wait, then we run the risk of the unknown.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We may not have any bidders if we can. It takes about 4 to 5 weeks to get back to this point. So that's why I recommend that we accept it. It's within market parameters, and it's definitely within our millage rate parameters with our patrons. And that's the single biggest factor to me.
Okay.
Does a 4 to 5 week wait period hurt us from a financial standpoint, from being able to?
It doesn't affect us necessarily on our payments, on our obligations.
Yeah.
But again, it does send a message to the markets. So we have to wonder how that message is received. And there's no guarantees in 4 to 5 weeks what we may or may not have. If we were way outside of market parameters, if we were looking at a 6 or a 7% versus the sub 5, I might be a little bit more hesitant. I respect the difference of opinion on that. Just talking through my thoughts and my conversation pieces internally, why did I make the recommendation that I did to accept the low bid?
I think you have to understand the economic things going on with the country right now too. I
Mhm.
mean, that's part of it. There's a risk out there, right?
Sure.
Tariffs and all the.
The tariffs have had a rising impact on market rates. I had a project about 5 weeks ago. They were 2 days before pricing when the U.S.-China tariff went kind of wild, and it hit them for about 0.25% on their construction financing. It was about a $2 million impact on the district proceeds. So tariffs have absolutely had an impact in the last 5 weeks.
You've never steered me wrong in all my years.
I hate it because of the optics of it, and that's why it makes me really nervous. And I understand where you're sitting as a representative of the community. But again, what I go back to, and not to overemphasize, we're still right in line with parameters. If we had 4 bids and this was low, I wouldn't be nearly as concerned, or nearly as not concerned, but nearly as upset. It just feels worse when there's only one. But Millwood only had 1 bid, and they were lower than nearly everybody around them for a 2 or 3 day window. Fantastic rate for them. Different scenario, but same situation of we only have one. How does it compare? Well, when we look on either side, it was fantastic.
How many years is ours? I just noticed the year, like, what's the term?
Ours is a 2-year coupon.
2 year.
2-year. Mm-hmm. Yep, 2-year bond. Again, it's a lot to take in, but we are in line with that tax rate to our community. We're within a reasonable window with market conditions, especially when we compare 345 on the tax exempt. We do have some other comparisons to look against. And then again, from a public perspective, the state requires additional documentation from me.
The only thing that I would add to this conversation is we don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks. Something great could happen and rates could go down. But if I were betting one way or the other, I wouldn't want to bet that rates are going to go down as opposed to rates are going up. We have a sub 5 number. I do recommend that we take that and we move on. It's not 3 or 4, but it's not 7.
So let me talk through as well, because I think this does bring a little bit of perspective. Let's just say best case scenario, we were going to get 4.6. We're still taxable because of that 90-day window. Best case scenario, we were going to get 4.6 or even 4.5. So if we do 11 million, I want to make sure I have my number right, 925 times, we go all the way down to a 4%. That impacts our millage rate. It's going to be less than 1/4 of 1 mil difference. So again, it's important. It doesn't have a massive impact on our community necessarily. Respectful to how much taxes are, I think the tax impact to the average patron, we're talking less than $1 per year difference between all the way down at a 4% and a 5%. Give me 1 minute. So the difference is $238,000 in total interest. Again, significant number, but what a lot of patrons want to know, how does that actually impact me? So $238,000 divided by your total valuation at 100 and I'm sorry. I misread the number. 300. I was like, that's not. I read your millage rate total, and I was going, that's not the right number at all. Divided by 339 million. 339, 89,751 times 1,000. So maybe 0.7, on the actual millage impact if we jumped all the way down to 4% versus where we are today. So instead of where our target is target is actually below 39. We're hovering in 34, 35. So instead of 5, we're at 34.3. That's the actual millage rate difference.
I do agree with Jared. In the time I've been on the board, you've steered us the right direction, and I think chancing it could be a mistake. I mean, I think all of us understand the economic climate may not be as favorable, the trend right now. So the most responsible thing to do is to make sure we, our community, our taxpayers this is maybe the most responsible thing with that money.
All right. I'll make a motion to accept the low bid. I, Jared Moser, hereby make a motion to accept the low bid of R.W. Baird
Yes, sir.
at the interest rate of 4.947% on the sale of the 11,925,000 taxable combined purpose building bonds dated July 1st, 2025.
All right, I'll second. A motion by Jared and a second by Lane. Can we get a vote?
Neil?
Yes.
Jared, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Item C.
Gotta find my way through this here. All right, moving on to item C. Discuss and take possible action regarding a resolution providing for the issuance of taxable combined purpose building bonds in the sum of $11,925,000 by the school district authorized at an election called and held for such purpose, prescribing form of bonds, providing for registration thereof, designated registrar and paying agent for this issue of bonds, providing for levy of an annual tax for the payment of principal and interest on the same, and fixing other details of issue.
Basically, with this agenda item, we have to register the bonds with DTC, Secretary of State, State Department of Ed. We also have to file the documents with the district attorney and the attorney general for legal review. With agenda item C, you are authorizing us to get those bonds registered, to get the proper legal approvals in place so that in July, everything is in order and we can actually transfer money at that time.
All right.
I, Jared Moser, hereby make a motion to authorize the issuance of the 11,925,000 taxable combined purpose building bonds dated July 1st, 2025, and fixing other details for the issuance of the said bonds.
And I'll second. Motion by Jared, second by Lane. Can we get a vote?
Neil?
Yes.
Jared, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's it for Jordan. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item D, discuss and take possible action regarding Red Rover Absence Management Annual Subscription, $2,000 implementation, fiscal year 25, and $13,250 for fiscal year 26 subscription from general fund.
So we're just moving over to Red Rover. Right now, we use the Red Rover system for our electronic timesheets. We're going to use that also for our subs and for absences for the entire district for all of our people. It's just consolidating this into one system instead of having two systems. The other thing, it talks to our financial software system where the other one didn't do a good job of that. And we have great customer service, and it's $2,500 cheaper.
Okay. Questions, comments? All right, I'll make a motion that we approve Red Rover Absence Management Annual Subscription, $2,000 implementation for FY25, and $13,250 for fiscal year 26 subscription from general fund.
I'll second.
Motion by Lane, second by Neal. Can we get a vote?
Neil?
Yes.
Jared, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes. All right, moving on to Part E. Discuss and take possible action regarding revised compensation schedule for school-based family specialists.
So we've had a little hiccup in our trying to get this kicked off, and I'm going to let Lisa explain all that. She's led the charge on this?
So we opened up the position and started interviewing. We've had some great candidates, but all of the candidates had concern about the compensation schedule. So after review, basically what we've done is we've just moved that compensation schedule to start at a higher rate, but only have 15 years worth of step increases. And so it still is within the window of what DHS and the county will reimburse. And so it's still at no cost to the district.
Okay.
I make a motion, we approve the revised compensation schedule for school-based family specialists.
I'll second it.
All right, motion by Jared, second by Katie. Can we get a vote?
Neil?
Yes.
Jared, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes. All right, moving on to item F, discuss and take possible action regarding data warehousing and assessment program subscription with Linkit for fiscal year 26, $46,200 from general fund.
So Linkit does exactly what it says there in the item, that it warehouses data, assessment data on every student. So from the time we start in third grade all the way through 12th grade, we have kids taking tests, all the ACT as a junior, all the way down to the CRTs as reading and math in third, fourth, and fifth, science also. Linkit is a software that is web-based and puts all that together for us. And so a teacher, an administrator, anybody that has the authority to go in and look at that kid's data can look at that data. So for special ed, for just, hey, we want to know what that kid did in third grade. Why are they struggling here in fourth grade or fifth grade? So that's all really good. It also helps us with our common formative assessments. So we can take the common formative assessments that we've created in the current system, which is Mastery Connect. We can bring those over. They do that as part of the install. And then as we create common formative assessments for just week to week or month to month or maybe a semester test or whatever, those will always be in there and the scores are always in there for us. So it is a great opportunity for us. And it's actually this next year, even with the PD that we have to have for our teachers, it's going to be cost neutral. And then every year after that, we'll save between $4,000 and $10,000 a year, depending on how much we have to use the PD in the future.
Questions or comments?
I'll make a motion that we approve the subscription with Linkit for fiscal year 26 for $46,200 from general fund.
I'll second.
All right, get a motion by Katie, second by Jared. Can we get a vote?
Neil?
Yes.
Jared, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes. All right, moving on to item 3, consent agenda. Discuss, then vote to approve all consent items. These items may be approved by one board motion unless any board member desires to have a separate vote on any or all of these items. 2 items. Questions or comments on the fundraiser purposes, expenditures, overnights?
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through B.
And I'll second. Motion by Neil, second by Lane. We get a vote.
Neil?
Yes.
Jared, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes. All right, moving on to item 4, executive session. Part A, vote to convene or not to convene into executive session to discuss employment as listed on attachment C for 25 OS 307B1. I'll make a motion that we do not convene into executive session.
I'll second.
Motion by Lane, second by Jared. Can we get a vote?
Neil?
Yes.
Jared, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes. All right, no executive session. Okay, moving on to item 4. Discuss and take possible action on employment as listed on attachment C.
I'll move that we approve the employment as listed on attachment C.
Sure about this?
I'll second. We get a vote.
Neil?
Yes.
Jared, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes. All right, moving on to item 6, adjournment.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second. Motion by Jared, second by Lane. Can we get a vote?
Neil?
Yes.
Katie? Or
Yes.
Jared? I'm sorry. Neil, yes. Jared, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes. All right, time is 12:31.